This video is going to be a follow-up video to the previous one I made where I talked about my drive shaft rubbing, because I got more issues once my wheels finally arrived. And these wheels are 24x9 intros. I custom ordered them. It took 3 months to get them, and when they showed up they were made incorrectly. They made their own backspacing and not the backspacing I ordered. So I shipped 2 of them back, had them remake them, and then the front, I just bought some custom wheel spacers. You can see that wheel spacer in there. It's a 10mm spacer. To get the spacer to fit, I had to buy custom wheel studs. And I looked online and found through, I guess it was the AutoZone website, these wheel studs off of like a 2019 F250 are the same size on the head but just longer, and so I was able to use those. Pressed out the factory ones and installed those with a little tool I got off Amazon, a little wheel stud installer tool, which was real easy to use. So getting the wheels to fit was a little tricky because you don't want it to rub the fender, because the truck's lower and it'll hit the fender if they stick out too far, and if they stick in too far they'll rub the control arm or the inner fender. And in order to get these tires to fit, which these are 295/35/24s, 295/35/24s, which give me a lot of cushion in case you hit a pothole. You don't want the wheels to break, or if you accidentally bump a curb, you don't want a road rash on the powder coat on the custom wheels. But that wide tire rubs the inner fender, and you can kind of see a hole here where the inner fender, which is cloth inner fender, the tire rubbed a hole in it. And unfortunately the front wheel speed sensor, which is what this used to be, or still is, but there used to be a plug here, and this plug mounted to the inner fender, and the tire hit it and ripped the plug out one time. I didn't know what it was. All I knew was I was driving and a bunch of lights came on the dash, traction control, ABS, all that. I didn't know what the problem was. I took it to the dealer. They said that the wheel speed sensor had broke. Something had kicked up off the road and broke it and broke the plug. So they soldered in a new plug. And replaced the wheel speed sensor. Charged me $900. And then they just put the wheel speed sensor plug right back on the inner fender where it went. And then a couple days later I hit a bump and it ripped that plug off again. This time, instead of going to the dealer, I took it home, removed my air box, and found that plug disconnected. Plugged it back in, it still didn't work, so something internal with the plug was broke. I had to cut the plug off, splice it back together, and basically hardwire that sensor in place to get it to work, and that reset everything. One thing I ran into underneath the truck was there was another plug that had been ripped out. At least it looked like it had been ripped out. This is the wheel speed sensor on the passenger side, which is mounted higher. On the driver's side, it's mounted to the liner. Passenger side, it's mounted up here. This plug was ripped out on the driver's side. I didn't know what it was. All I knew was this piece was missing, and all that was left was this open factory harness over there. So I did some research and found this goes to 4-wheel drive. If you have a 4-wheel drive model, this is what activates the hubs. And of course, this being a 2-wheel drive truck, I didn't need that. So I just filled it up with dielectric grease and taped it off to prevent corrosion. But yeah, if you lower your truck and you have 24-inch wheels, beware, number one, that your wheel manufacturer makes your wheels to your specs and not think that they can just design their own specs. And number two, beware of your wheels and tires rubbing the fenders, inner fenders, which mine still does, and it rubs this air box. If you turn too sharp, the tire rubs that air box, and be careful of the wires above where the tire would rub. So pull those out of the way with a zip tie. If the mechanic had done that when I paid him $900, I wouldn't have had this issue the second time. But as you can see, for me, one little zip tie pulled this wire from down here to up here, pulling that wire out of the way safely. and preventing it from happening again. It still rubs, and you don't want to hit too hard or the tire will rub this air box down here. So I have to be careful when I'm turning only to the right. When you turn to the right, this tire rubs. When you turn to the left, you're safe. So I make wide right turns at a slow speed, especially going up and down driveways. But at least the wire is out of the way now, and I knew what to look for. So if you have a lowered F-150 and you want to put some big wheels on it, move those wires out of the way so you don't have the same issue I did. Because with the traction control off, you're not used to how the computer backs power out around corners, and it was raining about the time that wire got ripped out. I went around a corner, truck spun out, and I ended up in a ditch. Even with the traction control, those traction bars down there, the Caltracs, which are great at preventing wheel hop, and I like them and would recommend them to someone else, they do not prevent you from spinning out in the ditch and ending up in a ditch, because these tires are street tires and not rain tires. So just be careful.